Welcome to Hope at Night, featuring James Marcum. Q&A with our live audience and host, Anil Kanda. Today's episode, Am I Healthy? And here's your host, Anil Kanda.
Welcome to Hope at Night. Most people are dying to know how to have or regain their health. How can we best take care of our bodies and live a long, optimal life? Helping answer that question is our guest tonight, who was named by US Today as one of the most influential physicians in America. He is a practicing cardiologist, author, and the speaker director of HeartWise Ministries. He has helped millions around the world understand how to navigate modern medicine and prevent disease and embrace a whole person approach to wellness. Please welcome to Hope at Night, Dr. James Marcum. Dr. Marcum, how'd you get interested in medicine?
So I didn't always want to go into medicine. I thought about all sorts of different things in life, but believe it or not, through circumstances, God actually wanted me in medicine. So I tried to avoid it as much as I could. And when I graduated from the University of Texas in Austin, I didn't know really what I wanted to do. So I applied to medical school and business school and law school, and I said, God, the first place that accepts me, that's where I'm going. So off to San Antonio, Texas, at University of Texas Medical School. Did that for 4 years. And then again, didn't know what to do. What do I do? So by then I was married, and my wife says, well, I wanted to do everything. So I thought maybe family practice, maybe orthopedics, but my wife said, no, you should try internal medicine. So I said, okay. Did that for 3 years. And then of course, same thing again. After 3 years, what do I do? Do I stay in internal medicine or do I go on? Well, God says you go on. And through some interesting circumstances, I took a cardiology fellowship at the University of Kentucky.
Dr. Marcum, I've got to ask, why cardiology?
Well, here's the reason, okay? I didn't like poop, okay? I didn't like sputum.
I don't blame you.
But blood didn't bother me, okay? And in cardiology at that time, you got to work with your hands a lot. So you get to work with your mind and your hands. And I loved taking care of people that were really, really sick, helping them out when they were in the worst shape of the world. The codes, open up the arteries in people that are having a heart attack. So that's sort of my journey. And now I'm blessed to do acute care cardiology 3 days a week. And I do ministry where I do research and talk to people and try to help understand the balance between modern medicine, lifestyle changes, including natural remedies, and I also point people, if they're interested, into the spiritual side.
Dr. Marcum, it sounds like with your experience and education, you have a well-rounded perspective on health. Now, I know we can talk about a lot of things right now. We can talk about modern medicine, how to reverse disease, natural remedies, but let's start off very basic. How does someone identify if they might have a health need? Why is that so important?
Well, most people come to me and present with a need. Some people would call that a symptom. Chest pain, passing out, can't breathe, swelling. Those are emergency situations. We have to do something about that right now. And then there's also the hidden needs. People don't even know they have it. Everyone sort of understands that there might be something in my life that's brewing, and it might be a mental health problem. It might be a disease that's slowly building that's not going to show up for years and years. But if we can find out those hidden needs now, we can give them tips so they can have disease reversal forever, as well as make some changes in the short term.
Now, this is so important because as we get older, and I'm getting older.
Oh, no, you're not.
And I'm starting to notice that sometimes things just feel off.
Yeah.
How do you identify the proverbial check engine lights
Right.
to know
Right.
if you need to start addressing this issue, find out what's
Yeah.
going on, etc.
That's a great question. So any symptom that doesn't go away is something you need to look into. Now for me, I deal with things that can kill people right away. So any symptom above the waist that's new, that you cannot explain, you need to get that evaluated quick. If you can't breathe, you're short of breath, you're swelling, you're passing out, those you got to go to the emergency room and get help right away. Everything else, usually you have some time to look into. And that's what I wanted to talk to a little bit about, the place for modern medicine. Because I admit modern medicine has got some bad raps.
Right. I mean, with everything online telling us this or that doctor, this new remedy. I mean, a lot of people are confused about medicine today.
But so I use modern medicine every day, but it's usually so I can get someone to have enough time so they can think about these other things. Okay? So I want to show, a lot of people come to me with heart attacks. And I wanted to show a picture of an angiogram. So the modern technology is pretty amazing. So there's a picture of an angiogram. That's what we do when someone's having chest pain that won't go away, that might be having a heart attack. We take pictures, because if we don't do something, they could die. So stents are a great place for modern medicine. Great place for modern medicine, okay? If you're having a heart attack, we want a stent. But that just fixes the acute problem, doesn't take away the cause. So a heart attack is a secondary problem, okay? I want to show another picture of a person that had some rhythm problems. Okay. This person was passing out, and we can do an EKG, and on that person we found out that their heart was going too slow, okay? They were passing out. This was an elderly person. Sometimes the wires wear out. And we get old based on our genetics and the stressors we put on our genes. So let's say everyone in your family has cancer and you smoke cigarettes. Well, you might get cancer earlier than if you didn't. So this person was passing out. They were fairly young, in their early 60s, okay? They had a great job, so they got a device like this. This is a pacemaker.
That's a pacemaker.
Yeah, that's not very big. We just put this under the clavicle with 2 wires that go into the heart, and this person's alive and doing well today.
I always imagine a pacemaker being the size of a heart, but this thing is small.
It goes under the skin, and there's 2 sensors that go inside the heart. One senses and the other one fires, and it usually lasts 8 or 9 years. This person would have passed away if they didn't have the pacemaker. So it's a great thing.
Modern medicine right here works well.
Yes, for emergencies, for parts that are wearing out, and also for genetic disease. Some of us are born with genetics that are just bad.
Challenges that we were born with.
Yes, and one person came not too long ago that had an infection. They went to the dentist and they had their teeth cleaned, and they had an infection in their tooth, and it got in their blood. And when it got in the blood, the infection, it was a staph infection, and it went, and unfortunately in the blood, the bacteria want to have some food. So they like to get on a heart valve. So they started munching on this heart valve, but we need a heart valve. So in that place, if we don't get rid of the infection, the patient dies. And this is what we pulled out of the heart. That is an infection that was on the heart valve that was actually eating through that valve, and it would have eaten through the whole valve and they wouldn't have been able to breathe. So that's another good place for modern medicine.
With all the ideas out there regarding medicine, it sounds like your philosophy here, if I'm understanding this correctly, is like, look, your emergencies, those big needs, those immediate needs, issues going on with your body, broken bones, etc.
Yes.
By, all means, head to the hospital, go see your doctor right away. You need to go talk to them.
Right. And there's, if I can't see well, I want to wear some glasses, right? If I have some cataracts, which a lot of people go blind worldwide because of cataracts, that can be fixed. If I'm not hearing well, I want a hearing aid, right? If I can't walk anymore, movement is so important to a body to stay healthy. I can have a new knee. right? But for everything else, it doesn't get, these are secondary problems. These aren't primary problems. You know, and since I've been in medicine the last many years, we had such new developments. One of the new ones right here is a defibrillator.
That's a defibrillator.
Yes, not very big at all. We put these in people that have weak hearts because it will shock them if they have an abnormal rhythm. You've seen the ones that we do on the outside, you know,
Right.
boom, you know, boom. This is internal. It monitors every beat, every second, and if it goes into any abnormal rhythm, it will cardiovert you or shock you.
Does a person feel it?
Oh yeah, oh they'll feel it. Yeah, they'll feel it. You know, they'll know they have it. But it's probably for them they choose that rather than have the alternative. Now, when we offer modern medicine, I try very important not to go against someone's belief systems. Belief systems and conscience are very important. Some people say no, when it's my time, I don't want extra things, and that's okay. You know, I said, well, that's okay, but if you don't have those things, would you be interested in learning about permanent healing? And I'll talk to them a little bit about that. This here is an epinephrine pen. A lot of people have peanut allergies. They get bit by a bee, and they do something called anaphylactic shock. They'll come to the emergency room and they can't breathe, their blood pressure will be going down. We'll just slam this into the arm, and they get a jolt of epinephrine that gives us time to treat the acute problem. Now, I'm hoping on this program that I don't have to use this on you, but I mainly have it for myself. So if I have an emergency, boom, I can actually put this in my heart if I need to. So this is another place for modern medicine.
Wow, this is really amazing because you're really describing how much we have advanced in medicine.
Yes.
I mean, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, some of this stuff wasn't exactly available, and so people were dying of these very quickly. But now, because of the advancement in medicine and technology, we can save people's lives.
Yes, we can keep them going longer, but I want to make this point. Modern medicine and technology doesn't explain everything. We're moving slower than other truths that are out there. But modern medicine is great, but it usually treats secondary problems. Secondary problems.
Dr. Marcum, when should I know that I need to get an evaluation?
I'm going to ask you this question. Do you take your car in to have it looked at every so often? The oil change? You do that, right?
Right.
That's something you do on a regular basis, okay? But your body is much more valuable than a car.
That's right.
So I think on a routine basis, you should go see your provider, and they can do some things to see if you might have hidden needs that you don't talk about. Now, what I found is a lot of people will not tell me how they really feel. The younger generation now gets a little, I know I've grown kids, and they get distracted easily by their cell phones and some of the other things. And when they get distracted, they don't pay attention to some of their inner needs. So a lot of people have inner needs, mental needs, and even physical things that are changing inside that they can't detect. Well, providers can do some blood work, they can do some basic testing, that they can identify a problem and give you tools to slow down the progression of disease so you don't have these secondary problems, so you don't need modern medicine. But more than that, they can get you involved in the healing process.
What questions do you think are good to ask when you are going to a medical provider?
The first thing I think people have to do is they have to be organized, they have to be honest. So if you're having an active symptom, you have to describe it in great detail. You know, if you're having chest pain, when did it start? What turns it on? What turns it off? Does it happen when I breathe? So real specific data. So I like to know about a specific symptom. Then I also like to know about a patient's belief systems. Some people do not believe in modern medicine. Remember, modern medicine treats symptoms and not cause. So some people might decide to go the natural remedies or lifestyle routes. And some people, for instance, I took care of a person the other day that was from a faith that would not take a blood transfusion. So they would not take a blood transfusion. So we honor that. Okay, we honor that. So I want to know about their belief systems. Then I also like to know what their heart's like. You know, if I give them some advice to maybe make some lifestyle changes, let's say maybe sleep better, drink water better, rest better at night, maybe cut back some of the stressors in the world, maybe turn off the cell phone some at night, maybe some lifestyle things that maybe get away from noise. All of these things are inputs which damage our genetics. We have bad genes that malfunction. That's, the epigenetics, genetics. We have a symptom. We go to the doctor with the symptom and we get treated for the symptom and not the cause. So I asked them, how much are you willing to do? Would you like to take a journey one step at a time? Now, some people, the ones that are going to die if I don't, the ones that have had 3 bypasses, they work at Wall Street, they have blockages everywhere, they can't walk across the room because of angina, they'll be dead in a year or 2, they're willing to make all the changes at once. But most people, you have to go slow, one step at a time. So I try to get a feel for what they want to do in the life. But most people, if you talk to them and give them steps that they can do and explain it, they'll try to get rid of some of the stressors that are turning on their bad genes that are expressing their symptoms. And they just explain, do you want to spend a lot of money treating symptoms, or do you want to get at the cause? Now, some people say, no, I don't want to quit smoking. I'm going to keep smoking. I had a guy the other day, get this, he'd been in the hospital 5 times with heart failure from amphetamine use. And I said, listen, my friend, this is the fifth time I see you with heart failure. Would you consider, giving up this, the amphetamines? And he says, I don't think I can do it. I said, well, if you can't do that, I'm still going to care for you, okay? I'm here to love you and not judge you. I said, but would you be willing to listen to some other things regarding disease reversal that might help you even if you can't get over this? And I said, oh, yeah. And I said, listen, would you let me pray with you? Because my belief system, I believe that there's a God. I believe that there's a God that heals, that we're just passing through. We're not here forever. There's a greater plan for all of us. And, I said, listen, and I talked to him a little bit about what I consider the ultimate textbook in medicine. You cannot believe everything you see in modern medicine. And I've noticed a lot of people don't trust doctors anymore. I don't trust everything I hear either. Right. So I try to offer them better, and we need more of this and this voice. So that's why I'm thanking you for having me on to sort of help describe the balance.
I appreciate this, Dr. Marcum, and I think you've really enlightened us more on modern medicine. So thanks so much for the prescription. We've been talking with Dr. Marcum about optimizing our health. When we return, we'll dive into chronic disease, a topic that affects millions around the world. Stay with us. Welcome back to Hope at Night. There's a lot of talk about health worldwide, contagious diseases, health trends, and social media fads. But right now, we're going to talk with our guest, Dr. James Marcum, about something he's been researching with a far-reaching impact, chronic disease. Dr. Marcum, what exactly is chronic disease?
Yeah, well, chronic disease, just to give you some information about it, it's a hot item now. Everyone's interested in it because we think in the United States, and I know this is broadcast around the world, but in the United States, it's been estimated that we spent $4.5 trillion everyone on healthcare last year, on chronic disease, total disease, 4.5 trillion. 90% of that 4.5 is spent on chronic disease. So we don't fix the problem. So you hear a lot about chronic diseases, like being obese is a chronic disease. 40% of people are obese. 70% of people carry extra weight. The weight itself has chemicals that damage the body. So that's a chronic disease. And if it goes on long enough, it damages things. Diabetes is growing worldwide. And a lot of that happens to be because of the food. And 70% of the food we're eating now has some element of processing in it. And you're going to hear a lot about that. Let's get rid of number 5. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. And we're starting finally to talk about it because it's very expensive to treat chronic disease. Hypertension is a chronic disease. Inflammation is a chronic disease. lack of sleep and good rest is a chronic disease. Having stress, depression, lack of purpose, not being able to connect with your environment in your social world, that is also a chronic disease.
Now, Dr. Marcum, I've got to ask, these chronic diseases that you're describing, what are they being aggravated by more than ever before? I know you mentioned
Yes.
food, stress. Are there any other factors?
Yes, so the way I think about chronic disease is we have inputs that come from everywhere. We have good inputs and bad inputs. All inputs change your physiology. For instance, if I scare you, that was an input, right? So immediately your heart rate changed. So I've got a device, and I think everyone should have one of these. This is called a pulse oximeter, okay? I tried to change your input by a little scare, okay? That makes adrenaline, cortisol go up in the body. That's a stress reaction. So let's see if it did anything to you. So I'm going to need your finger here.
Okay.
Okay. And everyone should get these because this will let people know pretty easily if they're sick or not. So I turn that on. Let's put this finger there. So if you're really sick, your heart's going to be going really fast and your oxygen level goes low. So I didn't hurt him. You know, his SAT's 97. So, you know, and his heart rate only came up to 70. So you're in pretty good shape as far as that goes.
Well, it's because I'm here at Hope at Night.
The point I was trying to make is all of these inputs, they can turn on your adrenaline system, your stress system.
Right.
We call that inflammation. Inflammation is not good. Inflammation ages the body. It ages genetics. It makes things get old quicker. Okay, so just scaring you. But if you had inputs that stress your body over a period of time, it could cause these chronic disease inflammation. For instance, if you're a type that will take in a negative stressor like too much food, it's going to damage your body. Too much processed foods, it's going to damage your body. Not sleeping at night, going to damage your body. Too much salt. So all of these stressors come from many different places. Did you know that there was research just this last week in the Journal of the American Cardiology that says if you sit too much, that damages your body. So you should get up and move every hour. You know, we should do, if we don't move, that's a stressor. Our blood was designed to move. We don't move, another stressor. If you add this stressor up with the food stressor, the lack of sleep stressor, the mental stress part, all these stressors add up. It damages your genetics. The weakest part of your system malfunctions. Then you either have a disease or a symptom. You go to modern medicine and they treat that. Are you following me here?
I am. What's really fascinating about this is, as you're describing this, I'm just thinking to myself, everything in today's society is really contributing and bringing about these chronic diseases, from many modern careers to the things we're watching on television, to the news.
Yes.
We're imbibing the politics, broken relationships, and we're seeing the chronic diseases not just, happening in older populations, but it seems that younger people are now dealing with chronic diseases. It wasn't supposed to be this way.
No, we weren't designed this way. And I'm going to ask you, why do you think this is happening? Why do you think we've seen this rise? 90% of the healthcare dollars spent on disease that we could do so. Why do you think that's happening?
Oh man, you're the doctor.
Okay, no, it's good, but I'm always curious to see why the general public think this has happened. And if you were a patient in my office, I want to engage you. Most people say, I don't know. I haven't given it any thought.
Right.
So that's step one.
Right.
Do I want to give my life, my body, a valuable resource that's been gifted to us? Do I want to give it some thought to take care of it? Or do I just want to ignore it until something goes wrong and then depend on someone else to take care of it? Right. So that's one. But chronic disease has developed in our society. A lot of it's happened to do because of, Edison and the light bulb. Now we don't sleep at night.
Right.
And the cell phones. So a lot of it's devolved because of our society, our culture. No one's really thought about it very much. But now we have to think about it. We can't afford to do this. We're dying younger, we're dying sicker, we can't afford to pay for it, but we need to give people the options if they want to do something about chronic disease, the option. Now, a lot of people will not do it because chronic disease makes the system lots of money. When you put a stent in or treat for diabetes the rest of your life or carry extra weight, for instance, the weight loss thing is driving me crazy, okay? So right now, the modern medicine, if you have extra weight, which 70% of people do, let's give you Ozempic, let's give you Wegovy, let's do a bariatric surgery. But in addition, shouldn't we give someone the opportunity to say, listen, there's other ways to do it that are less dangerous, that are less expensive. Let's move this one step at a time.
Because those things aren't curing the problem.
Right. We're just dealing with a secondary problem. Chronic disease is a secondary problem. It's not the primary problem. So that's why some of this research that's being developed is so exciting. You know, we get a lot of, there's so much going on in hearts now. Defibrillators, we got this new test called a coronary angiogram, where we can do a non-invasive test, and I can tell you whether you, even if you don't have any symptoms, I can tell you whether you have any disease at all. For instance, this is a picture or the representation of a blood vessel. Now, this was probably a pretty big blood vessel of an animal like an elephant, okay? And this inside lining is called the endothelium. This goes to every blood vessel and every organ in the body. This is the endothelium. So you would think this is what malfunctions a lot in cardiovascular disease and a lot in chronic disease. Any type of stressor, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, lack of movement, lack of sleep, turns on inflammation, and it can damage this blood vessel. So here is another picture of a blood vessel that's been a little bit damaged. You see that yellow in there?
Right.
It's been damaged and fat, plaque gets in there. A lot of people have this. They don't even know it. But now we have technology, we can tell if a person has a plaque. This is exciting for me because I can tell them at an early age, you have a plaque. And now with AI, you've heard of AI, right? AI, we can do models that predict if you have this amount of plaque and your arteries look like at this age, this is what's going to happen to you over the next 10 years.
If there's no intervention.
Right, if there's no intervention, okay? You're going to have a symptom. So if nothing's done, you could have that. I think you can appreciate that. And this can happen any blood vessel in the body. If it happens in the heart attacks, the brain, strokes, dementia, kidneys, go into kidney failure, legs, amputations. So any type of stressor like diabetes, hypertension, all this damages it. If you eat more than 10% of your calorie in fat, it has to go somewhere. And if your genetics say let's store it in the arteries of the heart, not good. Also, sodium. Too much sodium damages this blood vessel too. The average American takes about 3,500 milligrams of sodium in a day, but we only need about 500. So let's say things get worse. Then all of a sudden it gets like this. No blood gets to the organ. The organ starts having a problem. You start having a symptom, you go to the doctor. But we could pick up this at an earlier stage. This is a hidden need that people don't even know they have. But I'm saying if we can let people know this is going on now at an earlier age and give them options based on their belief systems, we might be able to keep this here and not have progression to needing modern medicine, which is costing so much money in the world we live in.
Doctor, I've got to ask, I'm curious, you're talking about blood vessels all over the body. How does a trained physician find out when the body is full of so many blood vessels where there might be a potential blockage?
Well, you saw that scan that we have urgent, that's called an angiogram. We can have, I brought another picture of a heart with some blood flow in it, and it's another way we can tell the blood flow that's in a heart muscle. We have the technology. Now we have these CAT scans that can pick it up in the heart, but we can image basically with MRI scans, CAT scans, angiogram, any blood vessel. But really, we don't intervene until they're having a symptom. But that doesn't ever get at the cause. So we're treating chronic disease. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
We'll put stents in people over and over, costing a lot of money. We'll bypass them, but even a bypass surgery doesn't take away the disease.
Right.
We're treating a symptom. Dialysis doesn't take away the disease. Medicines for blood pressure don't take away the disease.
Doctor, the suspense is building up right now.
Okay.
How do we deal with chronic diseases?
Okay. You're going to hear this probably for the first time today. I think that God has given us new technology. New technology. Because as I said earlier, I am one that used the Bible as a textbook because I believe you have to have an authority. And usually in groups, we don't have time to do this today, I can prove with science that the Bible's true. I can prove with science. Yeah. Statistics, archaeology, I can prove it's true. And there's things in the Bible, I call them biblical prescriptions, that we can apply to people's life. Okay? And that's going to be the ultimate treatment for chronic disease and disease reversal. So let's say you can't do all these things. Well, there's truths in the Bible that says even if you can't do it, I've made promises that if you claim, you can have eternal healing. And then in the short term, I can give you some power to maybe help you overcome some things, but we're never going to be perfect. That's why we need something more.
Right.
Okay, but I can prove the Bible. So I've used the Bible as an authoritative to help guide my decisions, both in acute care, helping people delete systems, and also the place for lifestyle changes. Some people, I can say, listen, there's 5 things that you can do to lower blood pressure. Would you rather do this, or would you rather take a pill? And they'll say, well, you know, I don't think I can walk. I don't think I can, go to a healthier diet. I don't think I can sleep better at night or do intermittent fasting. I don't think I want to try things like flax and ginger and other things. Just give me the pill. And that's okay. I give them the pill. I explain some of the things we've talked about, and I still love them. Don't want to judge them, okay?
Right.
But getting back to your question, Francis Collins wrote a book called The Language of God. And he says that the DNA codes for protein that decides where you're at. So I think that just the DNA coding, a sign of intelligence, lets us know that we just didn't Big Bang us, right?
Right.
Intelligence from coding, that probability says that can't happen. Well, now, since the genetic code was involved, we now know what's happening inside the genes. We now can understand what we call the epigenetics. That's the software that determines the hardware. So this is hardware. But all of these stressors affect the software, which is termed the epigenetics. And if the epigenetics have enough problems, the hardware malfunctions and we get at our system. So the truth is we have to get at the epigenetics, the software of our system. Am I
I'm tracking
me?
with you so far.
Are you tracking?
I'm excited about what the conclusion is.
Because I don't want to make this too complicated. Because that's when things get too complicated, people just turn you off.
You're telling us so important before we get to this cutting edge research, which is you have to understand why the root, dealing with the root issue and addressing it with a cause is going to be more effective long term in the end for you.
So I'm saying the cause happened a long time ago, and now we're just dealing with these changes in genetics that are going to age all of us at certain rates, but we want to slow down aging, which is the chronic disease portion, okay? So I'm working on research, and others have too, that shows things like, if you go back to the Bible, okay, and it gives some suggestions about chronic disease. And in my studies so far, I found out that the truths in the Bible are far ahead of science.
Okay.
And you go back and, they described the universe far before we knew that things rotated around the universe. Epigenetics was studied by Jacob when he was experimenting with animals, getting spots on them. And now we know the science behind that. They methylated genes and different stripes were on by putting things in water. So now, the science is now catching up a little bit to the things that we know is true in the Bible. So this is important to sort of guide research, but now I can design research based on that. So in the Bible, it says, to know God is to love God, and separating from that relationship damages us to some degree. So it only makes sense that if I can find ways to worship God, improve the relationship, to love God is to know God, I'm going to improve my chemistry.
So if I understand this right, you're telling me there's actually a health benefit physiologically
Yes.
to worshiping God?
Yes.
Is that
there
right?
is. And now we're having the science to prove this. And you can see how valuable it is. I can say, you want to lose some weight? Well, one of the things we can add to your armamentarium is worship, 10 minutes a day. Now, how you worship, it took me a year to go through all of the different worship types and to come up with some basic 10 minutes of worship. But we're now doing the research in this to show that the genetic changes, because we have the technology to study the genes, the epigenetics, what methylates, the telomeres shortening, all of this fancy stuff is now able to be done to prove that the Bible is true, that we can apply these principles to chronic disease, have long-term healing, as well as power in the short term. Are you tracking so far?
I am so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me show you a scan that's been done by another researcher. This is Andrew Newberg that originally did the scans in brain, and he had people that did just 10 minutes of worship for a period of time. And he's able to do these MRI scans of the brain and look at them as a baseline and look at the change in blood flow after they had an intervention, just like you had another intervention. This is a worship intervention, a worship treatment that changes your physiology. Now, you're not going to hear drug companies marketing this, not a lot of money to be made, right?
Yeah.
But it does change your physiology. So in his research, he said it changed the part of your brain called the anterior cingulate cortex. He named that the God brain. So just 10 minutes of worship increased that. That's up in the prefrontal cortex. And just that itself turned down stress chemistry that we've talked about.
Right.
Turns down adrenaline, cortisol, all those inflammatory mediators that are turned on by all these stress inputs. You following me?
Right.
So it mitigates that to some degree.
So it sounds like what you're telling us is when you spend this time in worship and prayer, that your brain finds less of this agitation, the cortisol levels seem to drop.
Yes.
The brain is not so much in this constant aggravated stress response
Yes.
status and mode, and that has just this compounding effect upon the rest of the body
Yes.
that's ready to always fight or flight, right?
You're right. And in addition to that, you have long-term healing, because the Bible says, if you believe in me, you have everlasting life. You have healing forever. That comes from something I believe is true. Now, some people don't accept that, and that's okay, but I believe it's true. You have to have a true north somewhere. But also in the short term, this can be used as a treatment for chronic disease because it turns down some of these epigenetics, which is aging us. And of course, the more you get good at it, the more benefits you have. In the text it says, to know God is to love God. Well, how do you know God? Is through worship. And if you go way back to the beginning of the Bible, you look at Jeremiah and Revelation, the original problem is because we were disconnected by God. There were lies that were believed about God, things were said. So really, disease started when the brains were altered. It moved us away from the way we were designed, which was to love each other. And it turned us to selfishness. And selfishness led to actions. Actions led to behavior, which damaged our genes. And they've been subsequently getting worse through the years.
Doctor, would you say then, when we do know, at least research is showing, right, that stress, issues that are going on all around us tend to contribute to diseases, then would you tell us in some of the most traumatic moments, in some of the most challenging moments, some of the most difficult moments, the most stressed out moments, those are the perfect moments, the best moments, the most healing moments to worship God?
Yes, and I feel so good that you asked that question. That means that you get it. Okay, sometimes I worry that I'm not able to communicate well. I've done this for so long, and I just want to communicate from my heart to your heart. There's a text in the Bible, Proverbs, it says, in all thy ways acknowledge him, worship him, be with it. And he's going to direct your neuropathways, your brain, which is going to affect your epigenetics, which is going to affect everything, which is going to contribute to chronic disease. Are we going to be able to reverse everything? No. But you're absolutely right. That is the first thing that I would do in any situation, is to acknowledge him and let him direct the next step, because he loves you.
It sounds like you're telling us that a relationship with God is the best kind of relationship to have.
Yes. In my view, that's the treatment for disease reversal in the long term, and it gives us power in the short term. It gives us hope. It takes away from fear, which is another chronic input that stresses us. And we don't have to fear dying, right? Because we know where it's going to end. So we just try to make each day a good day. So I have patients that come to me with end-stage cancer, okay? And they go, well, why do I have cancer? Why do I have this? What can be done? And, I say, well, I'm sorry that this has happened, okay? But sometimes in the universal scheme, God allows us to have things to heal us forever. And I would rather have a little short-term problem and have forever healing than not.
Right. Yeah.
And if you look at the universe, we're only here for a short period of time.
Right.
And so that's the philosophy that I've been using. And remember, there's a place for modern medicine, but we've created something that doesn't have balance. There's a place for lifestyle things, but there's also a place for looking at new technology, new ideas that might solve this chronic stress epidemic that can give people the power, that doesn't cost a lot of money, that doesn't have a lot of side effects, that might really help our nation and our world do a little bit better.
Dr. Marcum.
But does that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes sense. And it's exciting to know that my relationship with God not only affects me mentally, spiritually, but physically as well. There are health benefits. Normally we go to the exercise and the diet, but even worship impacts us, our picture of God. Dr. Marcum, I know we have much more to talk about. We're just scratching the surface. It's exciting. We've been talking with Dr. Marcum about whole person health and chronic disease. Before we go to our next segment, I want to invite you to visit our website at hopetv.org/hopeatnight, where you can view previous episodes, find additional resources, and also download this season's free gift. So be sure to check it out. When we come back, we're taking questions from our audience. Don't go away. Welcome back to Hope at Night. Tonight we've been talking about health, but now I'd like to hear from our audience members. Who has the first question?
Doctor, you mentioned that there are things in the Bible that relate to health. What are some of the other things that we can apply to improve our health?
Well, that is a great question, and thank you for asking that. So I have called that biblical prescriptions or biblical treatments for life. So what I go back is I try to show which ones are helpful and how it changes our physiology. We've talked about the stressors, and you have to stop me if I go too long. There's a whole program about this, okay? For instance, it says in the Bible that give thanks in all things. Well, we now have the research that shows when people are thankful, that turns down this stress chemistry that we have. We know that people that touch and love each other and hug each other in community, they make more endorphins, oxytocin. These are chemicals that turn down chronic disease, and there's science behind that. So there's numerous biblical prescriptions that we can apply, but I wanted to talk about worship today because that's at the core. Because if you don't start there, you can't discover some of these other things that not only help us in long-term disease reversal, but also help us in short-term disease reversal. It's not why we do things. It's not so much what we do, it's why we do them.
Wonderful. Any other questions?
I thought laughter was the best medicine.
Hey, well, that's a great question, and laughter is a biblical prescription. And I'm not a funny guy, but I bet you have some jokes you can share with us, right?
Sometimes.
See, well, I won't put you on the spot. I won't tell the joke about the rope because we're going to skip that, right? but anyway, in the Bible, it says a merry heart does good like medicine, right? That's a biblical prescription. So we know that people that laugh, that are happy, that are mirthful, that have a good belly laugh. So when our host makes you laugh, he's changing your chemistry. He's turning down your stress levels in your body. Remember, there's good inputs and there's bad inputs. We want more good inputs like laughter and less bad inputs like, some of the other things we have. So you're right, laughter is a good medicine, but the best medicine, it might not be the best, but it's a good one. It is a biblical prescription for life. God gave us laughter to improve our physiology.
Doctor, would you
Yeah.
say even watching things that are full of negativity,
Yes.
fear, anxiety, death, does that have an impact on
Yes,
us?
it does. Remember, every input that we put in our body, our brain has to do something. Even if it doesn't cognitively, doesn't come to our conscious, it still goes in there and you have to deal with it from a physiologic standpoint. I was just thinking when he said laughter is the best medicine. I laugh a lot when other people are laughing at other people. The joke's not funny, but I see other people laughing, and that makes me laugh. So every program that you can do now, you can tell a joke up front, and you can say you've improved their physiology, you've lowered the blood pressure, you've lowered inflammation, you've helped them live a little longer.
That's right. You're not the only doctor here, right? Any other questions? Right over there.
Well, please tell us what we should eat.
Okay. I've been dealing with that question for years. In fact, I got to work with T. Colin Campbell. He wrote a book called The China Study years ago, and I was actually able to be on his first documentary called Plant Pure Nation years ago. And I got to work with Esselstyn at the Cleveland Clinic through the years. And this is a hard question for people, okay? Because you have to meet people where they're at and move them along one step. Because if you eat foods that make you unhappy, that stress you out, then that's not good either. So it's a balance. But the science has showed if you can do this and be happy, the healthiest diet is a whole food, plant-based diet, eating things that are real, things that grow, with as minimal processing, fatty stuff that you can. But in working with real life people, you have to meet them where they're at. And sometimes I say, listen, you don't have to be perfect, but I want you to be happy. But you can certainly do this. You can drink water instead of soda pops. You can eat salad every day with maybe a vinaigrette. Maybe you can eat less or no. Now, I'm a diabetic, so I do intermittent fasting. So I do not eat at night. Okay, because that way my pancreas can rest and it can make I'm a type 1.5, can make a little more insulin. And by doing that, it obviates the need for me taking a lot of medicines. So those little things that you can do with nutrition, but I do it because I don't want to take a medicine. Okay, but a whole food plant-based diet with appropriate supplementations. Some pure vegans lack B12 and they lack some other things that they need. But you got to meet people where they're at and love them. Remember, this is just a part of a big plan, and I talk people about elephants. Are you an animal fan?
I love animals.
Do you have one at the house?
I do.
What do you have?
A German Shepherd.
Ooh, a dog.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a big fan of elephants, but I don't have one at my house. But elephants are some of the biggest, healthiest animals in the world, okay? They eat a plant-based diet. They get out in the sunshine. They hang around with each other a lot, and they do things with their trunks, and they drink a lot of water. They don't have cancer, they don't have diabetes, they don't have a lot of heart disease, they don't have the chronic disease, and you look at their tusk, they have strong bones too, right? So I say, that's what we want to do. We want to eat more real foods, and 70% of foods now are processed to some degree, okay? You don't have to be perfect, but head that way. But in my life, when I started this journey, I had to do it. I either do it or I die. Okay, I had a younger age, I had some heart issues, I have diabetes, but God has given me power through the Holy Spirit to gradually implement things one at a time. And now I've lost taste for some of the things that I just used to love to do. Now, I also have some sweet things occasionally, but it's not a habit. It's not an addiction anymore. And a lot of the foods that we get from our food manufacturers have addictive substances in it. High fructose corn syrup, sodium, some of these chemicals, they are addictive because they want you to buy more. And they're highly processed foods, so you tend to eat much more than you need. But when you eat plants and vegetables, for instance, me being a diabetic, I can eat as much vegetables as I want. Doesn't bump my sugar. Okay, and I actually wear a device right here on my arm where I can measure my blood sugar at any time so I can know what bumps it and not. But what helps me the most besides eating vegetables, not eating at night, is walking. Okay? I don't like it, but I get up and walk an hour a day every morning, not very fast. I also try to move around every hour. We haven't done very well with this today, but I try to move every hour and try to keep things moving. It's not so much exercise, it's movement. The body likes movement because when the blood moves, it keeps the endothelium healthier. It makes more of the chemical called nitric oxide. When you move, your bone marrow makes something called endothelial progenitor factor, which helps us heal. Now, we don't have a lot of information on exercise and common sense things like water because it's not a moneymaker. But these things might be the secret sauce to preventing chronic disease. So I'm glad that this information is going everywhere.
Right, and the two takeaways are eat like an elephant and move like an elephant. Right?
There you go, that's right.
I'll remember that. Any other questions? Right over there.
So who do I know who to believe when everyone seems to be a doctor these days?
Yeah, I mean, with so much telemedicine now,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can get whatever you want. A lot of people are asking, is this person even a doctor? This doctor's saying, hey, I'm offering this supplement. This guy's got a lab coat on. I mean, how do we know?
Well, I have the same problem. I don't believe a lot that I hear anymore. And people ask that question all the time. And there's so much bombardment in the media. If you hear something more than 2 times, even if it's false, your brain tends to believe it. That's called the illusory effect. You know, if you saw these commercials over and over, this input saying this is good, even when it's not, your brain tends to believe it. And over time, you sort of tend to believe those systems. So that's why you have to think for yourself. Come, let us reason. God's given you a brain. You've got to ask God, I think, for help to sort through this. And you have to go on what your belief system is. And you have to sort of go into, do I believe this person? Is he credible? Now, some of you in the audience will say, this Dr. Marcum is not credible. And I can live with that, okay? But I just want to throw out the ideas to get you thinking. So in answer to that question, it's you looking at the data through a truth, an authority that you can believe. So I've chosen the Bible and asking God to help guide my thoughts, even though I know that my alignments might not be with yours. And it's okay if we disagree, right? That's okay. It's how we handle that disagreement that matters.
Wonderful. That's practical. Any other questions?
Is there any research on the benefits of prayer versus the benefits of meditation?
Yes, and that's a good question, and that's going to be an area of controversy. Okay, let me tell you, because there seems like for every good thing out there, every good input, there's a bad substitute input. Okay, Herbert Benson at Harvard and Dusek at Harvard, they did studies on the epigenetics, which I want to do now, and they have shown that you can get these benefits. It's called the relaxation response. So you can get some of these benefits by breathing deep, from doing these other relaxation things, like you said. But what I want to do is I want to throw biblical relaxation and response into the mix and compare the two, okay? Because we know what the Bible says. So, but yes, this research has been done, and those have had beneficial health responses as well. But what I'm claiming that what we're doing with biblical worship, should have even more of a response on the genetics. We've already seen what it does on these brain scans and what it does in the brain.
And that makes sense. A lot of, let's take for example, Eastern meditation often requires the emptying of the mind or particular mantras, sometimes just reading something like a prayer. But what you find in biblical meditation or biblical worship is an active conversation with God, reading scripture that is positive to the soul. Like there's an input that very much recalibrates the mind in a healthy, positive way.
Right, and I tell people, I want people to worship the Creator and not creation, okay? And some of these other things, it's about what I can do and emptying the mind for other things, and you might have some health benefit, but it could be a little bit dangerous long term, okay? So that's why I think this is going to be an area of intense research, and that's why I'm hoping in the future that we can actually have science, the studies. We're set up to do this with these genetic studies. We're now set up to define, and it took me over a year to define what does 10 minutes of worship look like. What does it even look like? What's biblical worship really to do that in 10 minutes? So that's a challenge that's been out there for a while as well.
Hey, even the disciples prayed, Lord, teach us how to
Yes.
pray, right?
And I think it's an ongoing thing, okay? I think it's not the same for everybody. Some people might worship at work, but the goal is to be in an ongoing state of worship in everything you do. You want to glorify the one that created you, that loves you the most. And whether that be being here today, I'm hoping this is an act of worship, the way you do your work, the way you interact with people, and of course time in prayer, listening to God's voice, nature, interacting with other people. All of those can also, depending on your own brains, be acts of worship. So you can live in a state of worship.
Dr. Marcum, this has been a tremendous and wonderful and healthy experience.
Oh, good.
Thank you so much
My
for being
pleasure.
here. Jesus tells us in John 10, verse 10, I have come that they might have life and to have it to the full. Tonight, we've learned that God not only cares about our health, He also provides tools for our healing. Ultimate healing of our mind, body, and spirit comes from Him. And even better than living a good long life here, His greatest goal is to give you an eternal life in heaven with Him. Will you accept His invitation today? To find out more about this topic or others, don't forget to visit hopetv.org/hopeatnight for additional resources and to get your free gift of the season. And remember, no matter where you are in your health journey, with God, there is always hope at night.